Hi and welcome to this month's update from Dean Park. It's been a couple of months since I last updated you on what's going on, but the truth is I've been working on a couple of projects that are really time consuming, as well as carrying out some servicing on a lot of my fleet. Then throw in a busy work and family life into the mix, and then there really hasn't been much time to get videos out as I would normally do. However, I've enjoyed the break and I'm now glad to be able to share some of the projects and ongoing work with you. And this will include significant work on the mini grate wall at the incline section of the layout, including a demonstration on how I paint brickwork. I address and resolve the flickering lights on my Accurascale Transpennine set. My Accurascale iron ore tippler wagons are transformed. I highlight some improvements to the already impressive Hornby MK3 coach, including my thoughts on their new magnetic couplers. And finally, Dean Park goes Duplo Diecast with my latest purchase. Well, hopefully there's something in this video that will catch your eye. As always, I welcome all feedback, so please get typing your thoughts in the comment section below. I'd also really appreciate it if you could give this video a like and hit that subscribe button to support the channel. In the meantime, sit back, relax, as I bring you bang up to date with what's going on at Dean Park. The final part of the wall for the incline section has now been designed, it's been built, and it's in the process of being painted and weathered. This step section did prove a bit of a challenge, and I'll go into a couple of those challenges in a moment. It's designed to go at the right hand side as the train goes down the incline into the tunnel, and allows me to still look down into the cutting section from the front of the layout, or this side where I'm standing at the camera. The step sections require the end of the exposed MDF to be covered with brickwork, and there's a small buttress that goes on the back as well. So for that I've got a step design, and that just almost hooks, if you like, onto the edge there. Now you'll notice they don't go all the way to the bottom there. The incline will cover most of the bottom half of the wall. It was intended at some point to have these are cut at the same slope as the incline, to have them sitting on the incline, but I decided against it. And just went for the normal construction of fitting it from the top down. It doesn't really matter that these are a millimetre or two short. As I said, you won't be seeing those when the incline is in place and the scenic material covers that area. This part of the wall posed a bit of a challenge to me. A lot of this wall will be exposed, so you'll see that, and obviously as it steps down you see less of it, and the embankment will take over. However, with such a large piece of walling, or in this case 2mm MDF clad on both sides with brickwork, the MDF wants to bend slightly, okay, just naturally, because it's quite a flexible material. I couldn't support it all the way up with the MDF frame, because I said I need to see this part of the wall. So I came up with two solutions to stop this happening. First of all, the buttress that goes on here is actually made from a piece of aluminium, and it's been clad in the brick. So that just clips on there. So that adds a bit of strength to that section to stop it wanting to curve. The second part to the solution was using an aluminium strip and placing it all the way up the length of the wall there. And as you can see from the tunnel portal, I've cut a small notch out the side there, and that allows it to fit together without any issues, like so. The small gap there, when it's all lined up properly, will be covered with a buttress, which will go on the side of the tunnels. So that will all be hidden, and nobody will ever know that there's a piece of metal there keeping the wall straight and true. That took quite a bit of thought and engineering to get that to kind of all work together. I tried different methods, but that was the one that I felt that would keep the wall, you know, plumb, and avoid any unwanted curvature. And just to over-engineer it a little bit more, I've added this angle strip of aluminium along the top of the MDF there, that's glued to the back of the wall, and that will keep the wall nice and straight and true along its length. Obviously this MDF frame will help do that as well, but it's just a bit of belt and braces. As you can see there, that's a little bit of the aluminium strip there. This bit juts out, so it's not getting in the way of any scenic material that kind of slopes down from the raised embankment area behind the tunnel portal. Well, there it is in position. The longer wall will go at this side, and any gap between the cork bed and the side of the wall there will be filled with a bit of ply cut to the same angle as the incline itself. In a couple of chapters further on in the video, I'll show you how to mortar wash this type of engineer's blue brick wall, and also how to add some dry brushing to vary the tones of the brick faces. When scratchboarding parts for the layout, you sometimes spend many hours on a piece of seemingly simple detail. But I don't subscribe to the that'll do mentality, and I like to get it the best that I can. So as I go through aspects of the wall build, you can hopefully appreciate the hours, weeks, and in this case months of design and work that's gone into it so far, and it's not even finished yet. For example, just building, priming, painting and detailing one buttress can take several hours. Duplicate that by dozens and then add in the wall construction, not to mention the design aspects to ensure everything works, and before you know it, you've easily spent over 50 hours on a project. And I always find that when you mix it in real life, projects always take that little bit longer than you initially envisaged. Whilst I'm not one for taking an interest in steam locos, there are a couple that just catch my imagination, and one of them is Flying Scotsman, especially in this current Brunswick green current day livery. When Flying Scotsman was outshopped in 2016 after its preservation, it was painted in this Brunswick green livery with the orange boiler bands. It's a loco I've seen on many occasions on its rail tours throughout Scotland and indeed through Fife, and when Hornby announced that they were doing a diecast Duplo version to celebrate the 100th year of Flying Scotsman, I had to get one. So I put my name down for this particular one. There were 6 in the collection, but this is really the only livery that interests me enough to fork out the £362 RRP for this particular heavy die-cast double O gauge loco. The loco is made from die-cast aluminium, so it's got a good weight to it and good running characteristics. This particular loco has got a flickering firebox in it as well, and we'll see that when we get the loco running on the layout. This was the first of the variants to sell out on pre-order, so I was lucky to get myself a hold of one, and I did so at his Scooney Hobbies in Kirkcaldy. So thanks to Steve for getting his hands on one to sell to me. It's certainly a model that I'm going to keep. I'm going to run it as well. It's not one that's going to sit in the box and never see the light of day. I don't see the point in that personally. I'm a collector, but I'm also a modeler, so I like to run my trains when I can. The box is really impressive. Nice and hinged there. It's got a bit of information on the loco since it came back into service in 2016. Nice heavy duty foam to hold the ice cube for holding the loco in. I've got all my certificates and my information leaflets there, and I've got this nice black painted brass plaque that comes with each one. And these are specific to the version of the Flying Scotsman that you've bought. So I'm really actually quite taken with that. It's nice bit of quality. Hornby have done really well here. Got to commend them for that. Okay, the process of adding the mortar wash isn't one I would class as enjoyable. As you can see here, I've got the base colour of the engineer's blue brick, and all I've done here with this section, I'm splitting it up into sections to make it easier to work. I've coated it in a Humbrol 01, which is a grey primer, and I've thinned it down ever so slightly into one of these shot glasses, and I've just put it on liberally with a flat brush. I'm going to leave that about, what, maybe 7-8 minutes, and then I'm going to take a series of swabs and kitchen towel to wipe the mortar off the top of the bricks whilst leaving it in the recess in between the bricks itself. It may require 2 coats of the grey to get the mortar wash looking like you want, but you can judge that depending on what kind of mortar you want, whether it's a kind of newly pointed wall or a more aged wall where the mortar is maybe weathered down or in some cases fallen off. Well, that's the 3 sections now done. I didn't want to make you sit through it all. It's not the most exciting job to do. It might look a bit on the light side just now, but when we add in the dry brushing of the engineer's blue brick and the other shades of grey that I'm going to use, it'll bring the life back to the surface of the brick. And then of course you've got weathering on top of that. Here you can get a better sense of the mortar within the lines, and we don't want a uniformed approach here. As I said earlier, some of the mortar would have weathered down and indeed fallen out at different stages in the life of the wall. What I'll do in this sequence is I'll show you how to do one of the buttresses. It's a lot easier to show you on camera doing a small piece than doing the large piece which I showed you in the previous clips. Right, give it a good coating of the mortar wash. As I say, I've chosen grey for this because it goes better with the engineer's blue brick. However, if you're using a red brick, you may wish to go for a stony kind of pale colour, or indeed you could go with the grey as well, depending on the age and era of your brickwork. That's given it a good coat, and I'll let that sit for a few minutes before trying to remove any of the paint. What I would say is don't do all the pieces you want at once. Stagger it. So for example, if you're going to let that sit for 5 minutes, maybe coat that maybe 2-3 minutes after. So you're then working, it doesn't have time to dry on the latter ones, and that makes it more difficult to remove your mortar wash. So don't be tempted to coat the whole thing at once. Do it in stages. Make life easier for yourself. Okay, I think I'm ready to remove some of the paint here. What I'm going to do is show you 2 methods. My go-to method is kitchen towel folded up with some thinners on it. In this case enamel thinners, because I'm using enamel paint. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go across the surface nice and lightly and evenly to start with. Don't press on one area more than the other. Okay, so just very lightly, and I'm going vertically. You can also go at an angle, which I'll show you. As you can see there, the paint is starting to be removed from the tops of the bricks. I'm not pressing too heavily just now. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it round. I'm going to come from the other direction. A bit more thinners on there. Keep moving the kitchen towel around so you're getting a clean piece. And then you're going to start to as you can see there, it's starting to remove the paint, and I'm getting some more of the top of the brick showing through in the engineer's blue. So once you get the effect you're after, stop. You can go as at an angle across the bricks. If you get little bits of paper towel stick into it, don't panic. You just pick them off with a pair of tweezers or a cotton bud or something. It's not a big deal. There we go. And just rub that down. I think I'm happy with the surfaces there. What I'm going to do for the sides, carefully pick them up, I'm going to remove that using a cotton bud. Again, soaked in thinners. And with this, I'm just going to go down the brick. And I'm rotating the cotton bud as I go. So I'm getting a semi-clean piece of bud on these parts. I'm going to keep doing that until, once again, I've removed the the wash from the tops of the brick, or the effect that you're wanting. I'm fairly happy with that. What you can also do now is you can take your piece of kitchen towel again, a bit thinner, and just go over that section again, rub it down to clean up the surface. Job done. Hopefully the light is allowing you to see the effect there. Same with the other side. Careful not to touch the surface in my case. Don't want finger marks on the surface of the buttress. And I can use the cotton bud method again. Thinners. And rub it at an angle or up and down, depends what technique you prefer. There's always more than one way to do something to get the effect that you want, and it's finding the method that you feel comfortable with. There we go. It's a bit more thinner. Don't want to put a dirty cotton bud in the thinner, so that's why I use the little pipette. And you get the effect there on the larger face there of using the cotton bud. I'm fairly happy with that, so I'm just going to kind of blend it in, dry it off with the paper towel. And now you have to leave that to dry. If you notice it getting a bit chalky when it's drying, don't be afraid to go over the surface again with a damp paper towel or cotton bud, just to take some of the paint off the surfaces. But you'll get that effect, and you'll be able to judge it as it dries. I say give it a good 5 minutes to get the effect, and then you can alter it as you see fit. If you've seen my video on the Accurascale Transpennine coach pack, you'll have seen that I had flickering light issues with my driving trailer. Now I've resolved this using a Lays DCC 6-function decoder, and it's attached to its own power pack or stay alive unit, and that is just being housed, as you can see there, in the vestibule area. It's quite a sizable stay alive pack, and the lights stay on for a good minute and a half after you remove it from the track. So this has basically negated any flickering and issues I've got with the pickups and the connections between those and the PCB. The brass pickup design in the driving trailer's got many parts to it. First part you've got is the brass pickup on the bogie, and then that's connected to a brass strip that's inside the chassis via a very small brass pin. That brass strip inside the chassis is then hardwired onto the PCB board. Now, that's all very well if the track is perfectly straight and level. However, if you're going over, say, turnouts or around a bend, the axles want to move laterally, and that affects the signal getting sent from the brass pickups into the PCB, and hence you get the flickering lights. By using the Stay Alive that I've put on this particular unit, that negates all the issues for that, because once the capacitor is charged, as I said at the beginning, it stays on for a good 90 seconds or so. As you can see from the wall on the left, and indeed the longer section on the right, these have been given the wash by the Humbrol 01 Grey, and the grey has gone into the mortar lines. As you can see from the little inset on the screen now, that's what it looks like face on, but it's still a bit samey. I need to get a bit of variation in there, and for that I'm going to do some dry brushing with some Engineer's Blue Brick, and some Humbrol 32, and indeed mixtures of the both of these paints to give more variation along the length of the wall. As you can see, we've got a dry brushed area here and the undry brushed area there, and that will show you the difference between the two colours of the faces of the brick. This one just brings the darker greys back to the surface of the brick, as you can see in the shot on the screen now. What I'll do now is I'll continue with the rest of the wall, and then it'll be going on to using some Humbrol 32 and a little bit of a mix in of the engineer's blue brick there from Precision Paints, just to give a variation in the tones. The final stage in dry brushing is going to be using some Humbrol Matte 32. I'm just going to take it out of the tin there after stirring it and put it on the paper. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just load the brush very lightly at the ends and then proceed to pretty much wipe off most of the paint. That's now ready to dry brush onto the brick, and as I said earlier in the video, I tend to work at angles, but you can work vertically or horizontally if you wish. I'm just going to add a little bit onto areas of the wall, pressing a little bit harder on some areas while doing a wee bit lighter on others, just to give that variation in the brickwork. You don't want it to be stark, a stark difference. When I bring in the weathering in the next stages, then that'll start to add even more variation in. But I just like to use some Humbrol Matte 32 along with the Precision Paints Engineer's Blue Brick, just to give it that less kind of samey coloured look. As you saw in those clips, I've had my Acura Scale Tippler wagons well and truly weathered, and this work was carried out by Traction and Rolling Stock Works, or TRSW Limited for short, and Paul down at TRSW has done a fantastic job in bringing these wagons to life. I first came across TRSW on Facebook, so I contacted Paul and asked him what he could do for me with regard to these Accurascale Tippler wagons. These wagons are one of my favourite on Dean Park. Accurascale did such a fantastic job with them, it's little wonder that they sold out in pretty sharpish time. What I was really looking for was a realistic in-service look to these wagons. They hauled iron ore from the Central Belt in Scotland to the Ravenscraig steel plant in Motherwell, and they were seen in Fife during that time as well, so I had to have a set on my layout, and I always had the ambition and the intention of getting them weathered. However, having not mastered that skill yet, I thought it was best to get an expert to do it, and Paul certainly has come up with the goods with these. I gave Paul a series of photographs of what I really wanted from these. He used them along with his own pictures to come up with a really in-service look for around about the mid to late 1980s. Depending obviously when your era is, he will find and research the wagon's condition within that time era, so you've got a realistic wagon for your layout. What I really like about these is no two wagons has been weathered the same, and I really do enjoy looking down inside the wagons and seeing the internal damage and the scraping and the dust and the iron ore muck that's been built up on the inside. Paul's used a variety of methods here, from dry brushing to airbrushing, and really, you know, getting the best out of the Accurascale wagon, which really does take a weathered finished very, very well. I've had them back on the layout now for a good couple of weeks, and I've not stopped running them since. I've got them behind 37026 loco, which is a BR Blue split box 37, and that particular loco worked around the Motherwell area at the same era and time scale as these wagons, so it's perfect combination and a perfect marriage to make a realistic freight train. I've got the loads from Accurascale, which I will put in them at some point, but because of the detail that Paul's managed to put on the inside, I'm really enjoying running them empty just now. All the individual scrape marks and damage, it really does bring the model to life, and as I said, it's a fantastic job that he's done. If you want to get in touch with TRSW, you can find him on Facebook, or you can email him, and the email address is on the screen now. The whole process from getting a quote from Paul to sending them off and getting them back took well under a month, and Paul's a busy chap, so I appreciate him with the quick turnaround there. If I put a picture of the before and after on the screen now, you'll see what it looked like before the weathering took place, and I'm sure you'll agree it looks a lot better now that the work has been carried out. Right, that's enough from me. I'm going to get these wagons back, moving on the layout, and let you enjoy the work that Paul has done. I'd like to thank Paul for all his efforts. He's done a fantastic job, and I'll certainly be using TRSW Limited again in the future. In one of my earlier videos I highlighted the new Hornby MK3s, and whilst I think they're a magnificent new product, a step away from the previous ones with regard to detail, I found that the wheels were a bit on the noisy side. This was because they're cast to allow the brake disc detail to be fitted to the side. Now it was a one-piece casting with regard to each wheel, and I found they were very noisy on the track. So what I've done is I've swapped out all the wheels on this LNER rake to now have the standard Hornby coach wheels, and it has reduced the noise substantially and also increased the quality of the ride. There's less or no wobble with the coaches as they go along. Disappointing that I have to kind of do that, especially at the added expense. In 2019, when the sliding door MK3s came out, I actually pointed out to Hornby and showed them videos of the ScotRail coaches and how noisy they were. And they did admit at the time that they were a bit on the noisy side, but sadly they've done nothing about it and released the same type of wheel on these new coaches. That's disappointing, but as I say, they are what they are, and overall the coach is a good package. One thing that really does impress me is the new magnetic couplers that Hornby have supplied in the box with each coach. These go together with a nice firm click, and I've had this 9 rake of LNER coaches running on the layout, and I've not had any issues with separation, or indeed the coaches actually kissing and touching. As you can see, there's a very small gap there, and this opens out on the curve slightly because of the kinematic couplers we've got, and they do run very well. So I would recommend that if you're going to buy Hornby MK3s, certainly take a look at their new magnetic couplers. The Buckeye ones are the ones you get for fitting with the MK3 coaches. I'm in the process of converting all my new Mk4 stock over to magnetic couplers from the standard tension lock fitting. This is the first time I've had the LNER coaches out of their box since I bought them, well, must be last August time, and I've fitted the Hornby magnetic coupler to these two Mk4s, and the code for those couplers are R7398. Now, whilst they work perfectly well for the MK3, I just feel they're a bit on the close side with the MK4, and the coaches touch and kiss at certain points in the layout, and I've got broad curves, and whilst the kinematic couplers do their job and allow the coach to open out on the curves, I still feel they're a bit tight. Therefore, I'm going to stick with the Hunt Coupler Elites that I've fitted to my GNER and my Swallow set, because I feel they just give a little bit more wiggle room in between the gangway ends. That's the two coaches now fitted with the Hunt Coupling Elites. You can see a tiny bit more gap in between the gangway ends, and these run freely on second radius curves upwards. You can buy these products by clicking on the link in the description below. It is worth getting them because of the Class 91 and the first coach in the rake. Because the coupler sits at a slightly different height from the Class 91 to the Mk4, Hunt Coupling have factored that in and put a slight step on the magnetic coupler. I believe you can buy those couplers just as standalones for the DVT and the Class 91. Again, you'll find out more by clicking on the website link in the description below. Well, that's all I have for you in this episode. I hope you enjoyed seeing some of the progress over the last couple of months. In the meantime, take it easy, stay safe, and cheers for now.